Lord, we don't make it happen. And boy, I'm telling you, in the Bible, things that happened when the presence of the Lord was there. Just amazing, amazing. And we want to welcome you today and thank you for coming. Today, some of you, last Sunday we talked about Al not doing well, and as we saw him Sunday afternoon, and then Monday we've gone home. And so they've already had family service, piles of people, and so I just made copies of the bulletin for us, so we get to be part of it. We wanted to, and Al he was a character. They said when they catch him saying something goofy, and I don't know if I can get this right, but they would corner him on something, and he'd go, he'd just give that look. Anyways, you're going to hear and see, you're going to see him. So please don't be shocked. But you're going to hear and see him and different things that were shared. We'll just see a bunch of things. And so, excuse me. Al really always had the upper hand. So I told you the story. We were going to Mexico, and he said, "Pastor, have you ever done a sermon that's an illustrated sermon?" And he said, "I'd like you to do an illustrated sermon when you're in Mexico for 2 weeks." And I said, "Okay, what do I have? Water pouring, or there's all kinds of things you can do for illustrated sermons. We can talk about how God feeds us, and that's an illustrated sermon right there. This is the German youth that have been busy. It's beautiful today." And so I said, "Sure, I'll do it." Well, once you said okay, you're in trouble with that. He said, "What I'm going to do is every day, I'm going to have one of the pastors or one of the teachers bring their vehicle in." I've told you this before. "And you're going to change the oil and service it." And we had a nice big dirt pit. I've got to spend 2 weeks in the dirt pit. And some of the people down there don't change oil. I broke some of the lugs to get them off, just to get the oil out. Anyways, that was the illustrated sermon. At the end of 2 weeks, we had a supper. And he asked if I would speak to the pastors and the leaders. And you see, the illustrated sermon was, this is what God does. Now, do you want to hear what he's talking about? And so Al was, and we're so happy to have Miriam here today, because it's been a long journey, and they've almost made it to their 63rd years of marriage. And this has been a really hard summer, because I lost my father, I lost my brother-in-law, I lost Al, who was like my second father. And the reminder of little Justin Bickford and Al, him sort of hit it off, and you'll see some of that. But it's all, it's hard. It's hard. So, but Al didn't like for everybody to just be serious, and he was always pulling pranks and doing silly and sometimes stupid things. I like him like Edgar and Freebird, like the two guys up in the Muppet Show. And they're sitting out there, and one goes, "This is very interesting." But he says, "But very stupid." So you're going to see some interesting, you're going to see some funny, you're going to see some stupid, and some of you are just going to go, "Did I hear that?" And so we're going to start with a couple of videos. And this one was done a year or so ago, just out here in the park, in the our little lawn down there, in a little fire. And Al was telling stories, and he was the storyteller. Him and my dad, and I'll never keep up to them, but I'm trying. And so here's our first video clip.
Oh, please. Wait. Ready?
Larry, I'll get the lights up. We're finding how it works. This is all new. Some people in the church surprised us with this. And it's awesome. And we'll get it going. There we go. Oops.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Just got to get the little arrow, I think, down the bottom right left corner.
so nice when she gives a week's notice that she wants something, you know.
Still no lives. At least you get used to it day after day.
But it's so easy to think back, because I grew up in Bentley, and first years of our life, 1 mile east, 1 mile south on the farm. And I had 4 sisters.
That's just an arrow, it won't get bigger.
You know that? I should have a medal to grow up with 4 sisters. I made it. I made it. And in those days, you didn't have indoor toilets, and you didn't have washers and dryers and everything. So every night, my sisters would wash something, and they'd string a line, hang it up, and go to bed. And about 3 in the morning, I'd have to go to the bathroom, and I was outside through the door, and I'm heading towards the back door, and wham, I get hung up in the clothesline. Because it's a different place every night. One morning, my mom called me, and she said, "Al, it's time to get up." And I kind of grew in. And she says, "You got to quit playing with that neighbor's dog, because your ears are getting as long as the dog's ears are." And I thought, oh, what a joke at 7:30 in the morning. But I sat up, and here something was hanging down. My ears are getting longer. And I pulled on one, and it came off. It was my sister's pantyhose. And I got hung up in what was it? Another time, I was heading for the back door, 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't get any air. And I slowly collapsed on the floor, and I'm laying there. I'm thinking, is this my last breath? And our little dog came over, and he kind of went, and he grabbed a string, and he pulled, and here was my sister's bra, and it got hung up on my nose. She was 18 years old, too. She just fit.
I see it's shrunk, has it?
When I was 7 years old, my mom said, "Now after school, if you're old enough, you've got to go down to the pasture, gather the cows together, and bring them home and put them in their stalls." So I thought, ooh, I'm 7 years old. At that time, I was just about 4'1", a little guy, about 4 or 5 hairs on my head, but I thought it was a big shot. And I started going down, gathering up the cows, bringing them home every night. But the pasture where they were was kind of almost like a slough. It was wet. And in your bare feet, my feet would get cold. And I'm heading up the road, cheering the cows along, and my feet are freezing. And one day, one of my sisters came with me. She says, "I'll come and help." So she came, and we gathered the cows up, heading down the road. And and one of the cows made a cow pie. And she went over and stuck her toe in it. And she thought, oh, that's warm. And then she put her whole foot in, and her second foot. She was like, oh, is that ever warm? And I thought, you're crazy. But the next night I was by myself, and they did another cow pie. I thought, I'm going to try it. And I just put one toe and I looked around. Is anybody watching? No. It was warm. So in a minute I'm standing there, both feet in there. Oh, is this nice? Well, I got home and I went to the back door. My mom looked at my feet and said, what in the world were you in? And I said, a cow pie. They're warm. And so she gave me a basin and said, now you get out to the trough and wash your feet. So I did, but it was worth it. It was worth it. So every night I'd go for the cows, and every night I'd get a cow pie. And I was so happy just going.
Two little girls are gone.
But you know, by the time 5 years later, I was 5'11". Oh, is that the cow pies did that? And my hair, I had a 6-inch ponytail. Wow. And everybody's asking, how did you grow so tall? How did you get so much hair? And I'd start telling them about the cow pies. You can decide if it's true or not. But you know, as I think back all those years, so much has changed. Everything has changed completely. Yeah.
That's funny.
I remember the day my dad came home with a horse and a buggy. Whoa, a horse and a buggy.
Pretty modern.
Yeah. And he says, now this is for you to go to school in. You're going to drive, your sisters are going to sit there, and you drive good. Okay. So we went for a test drive, and it was a nice horse. Did exactly what I asked it to do. And so we started going into Bentley in the horse and buggy. In the wintertime, we had a sleigh. And when our neighbor found out that we were going to school in a horse and buggy, and they came over and said, could our son ride with you? Yep, sure can. That'd be nice. Then there's 2 guys and 4 girls. And so every day we'd stop at his gate and Herbert would hop in and away we go into school. Well, one day in the wintertime we were in our sleigh. The girls had the seat actually covered up with a blanket. Herbert and I were standing up front driving, and I said, "Ooh, it's cold," and I gave him a bump. And he says, "Yeah, it is cold." He gave me a shove, and I fell out, and I let go of the lines. And so the horse started trotting, and Herbert stood there for a while. What do I do? What do I do? He jumped out. And so the horse went a little faster. My one sister put her head out. How come we're going so fast? There's no driver. She jumped out. And then the next sister, and the next sister, and we were spread out over 1 mile. And the horse went in the gate, went up to the water trough, stood there, had a drink of water, and he was waiting for me when I got home. But my sisters made it sound like just a horrible, horrible ride, how we played this trick on them. And they had to walk all the way home by themselves because they're all spread out.
The horse all thought you were nuts.
What was that?
I said the horse thought you were all nuts.
That's how we do it.
The horse
But
is
you
going
know,
through-
memories are wonderful.
Oh, that's
They're
hilarious.
wonderful. And you relive certain things and you can just relive them.
Oh, that's fun.
Every time I talk to my sister on the phone, one of my sisters, or we meet or something, always reminisce. Remember those good old days?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
fun.
on the farm. And so, I thank the Lord for that. And you know, today, I'm thanking the Lord for my sisters. What's wrong? Have I gone crazy? No, they've matured. They've changed. And they're pretty good. So, it is wonderful. Family is such a beautiful gift. And
Where do your sisters
every
live?
day, I thank the Lord for my mom and for her family. She never gave up. She never gave up. 5 kids, and I was 11 years old when my dad left home. And so we made it. We made it. And each one did their part. My mom just worked and worked and worked. So when I get to heaven, I got to give her an extra big hug because she's appreciated more now than she ever was. And memories of you, folks. How beautiful. And you'd think, how could I have a good memory about that book? But we do. And so, the family of God is so beautiful, so perfect, so
He was
wonderful.
asked where your sisters are now. He was asked where are your sisters now.
No time, but we'll just see. So you go ahead and it's all yours. Is it my turn yet?
He has the problem. No. The reason I think, Perry, you picked the 2 of us, because when he was 12, he was chasing after Donna at 12.
She finally caught me.
He had to kind of be friends, be with Alan all the time, because then that would bring us to the Carruthers house, right? So I guess that's why you put me with him, because, oh, wow. Anyway, you know, can I say something before I start? You did a wonderful job of putting this all together. And I almost felt like I needed a good half hour to cry. Do you all feel kind of like that? Just to get a good half hour to cry. But it reminded me, I'm going to tell you a little bit of our story and how that guy that you love is your dad and your grandpa and your uncles and your whatever, great-grandpa. I'm going to tell you what was the source of that. But it reminds me of where the little boy, they needed to feed 5,000. Jesus had to feed the 5,000. And he said, the disciples go find somebody, found that little boy, right? 2 fish and 5 loaves? No, opposite way, probably. And the way it's like us, little guys. We were the ones that needed help when we were little. We were the ones that the Bentley Church flooded with care and love. And it's profound to me right now to stand here. Coming 78 years old, we were the ones that would not have survived without the care of God's people. And so, Al, when you take the little tiny bit that you have in your hand, because we were profoundly poor, but when you give it to God, you just saw, we saw what God does, right? We started with such a little bit. I just love you to bits, everybody. I'm so glad I'm your old auntie. And I'm so glad I have a yellow sweater. And is this about the size of the parrot? I thought so. Is it bigger? Oh. Well, at least I think the yellow. Okay.
I don't know, I like my yellow better than yours.
Okay, I love my big brother. He was a good big brother. And Alan was 5 when I was born, so I'm going to start my story, then I'm going to tell you. I'm going to start it there, okay? So we're up in a homestead in Clemenceau, Saskatchewan. It's a 1-room. I'm the 5th kid, by the way. And so that grandma just used sheets or flour sacks or sugar sacks sewn together. That was your wall. And when it's time for me to be born, my dad had gotten a horse and gone to get somebody to help, but Alice delivered me, guys. Alice delivered me. And I weighed in on one of those big old scales that they used to use. 1942 we're talking, during the war. And I weighed in at a whopping 13 pounds. And I believe God knew I needed to be a heavyweight because God knew the kind of big brother I had. And our life was not going to be for one moment without, I can't even think the word. It was going to be unbelievable because there was never a minute that he didn't tease us. And Donna, when these kids were sharing today, him putting us under that stool and then sitting on the stool so we couldn't get off of it, that was calm compared to what he did to Tim. That was anyway, when we left the homestead, I get tired.
Is it my turn yet?
No. When we left the homestead, so Alan's 9 by the time we left. So thinking your mind, Alan is now 9. We're leaving the homestead because once I was born, my restless dad was angry at God, and he decided we had to move. So he went to trail, and then he said, Caroline, you bring those 5 kids to trail when I call you. So Alan is 9. And when we went to trail, we had many, many moves. I'm sure every few months because of the turmoil in our home at that time. And then in 1946, we arrived in Bentley. And our dad had a chance to do the Chowan farm. So it's a mile east, I hope I say it right, somebody correct me, a mile east up on the Pearson Hill, if you know where that is, and then go down a 1.5 miles. That's the farm we were at. And we were going to live there and be happy ever after. So Alan is 9, and it's at that time when Alan really had to learn to harness the horses. He had to put the buggy on, he had to put the sleigh on, whatever they were going to use to go to school.
He was already taller than the horse by then.
He was pretty tall, yeah, but you don't know yet because you haven't started chasing on. So anyway, he was, and then Billy was born. Where's Billy? There's Billy. You were born in 1947 March. And shortly after Billy was born, I was excited because I was 5 by then, so I had to look after you, Billy. And shortly after that, my dad left our family. There was profound poverty. And I want to tell you about her mom. She knew a profound God. She knew a profound God, and she never for one moment wavered in her faith. She said, she gathered us around her knee, and she said, children, the Lord's going to help us. Children, the Lord is going to help us. We're going to be okay, children. And I remember on times when we would hook up the harness, or you saw the picture where we were coming into Sunday school. So Alan's 9 when he's doing that. He's bringing us into Sunday school. I was a beautiful child, was I not? You saw me. And then he would love to go fast, and he loved to, in fact, he did swing Donna off by the United Church, he went really fast. He got rid of you, and he went over dear. Dive into the snow. And he liked to do that. But one time when we were coming home from bed, Mom looked up into the sky, and she saw a cross. And Donna, you saw it, and Alice saw it, and I was just that as a sign, and it never left her, that the God of heaven was going to help Mom with 6 kids, and He's going to be faithful. I'm coming 78 next month, and He's been faithful. God never, ever once, but He taught us to work, and to work, and to work, and to work. And so as we were asking God, we were desperately asking God to help us. Mom taught us to work. And so it's an amazing thing when you think. So Mom moved us into town. Before the funeral or the graveside today, Bill and I took a tour of all the houses we lived in. We never owned a house, we always rented it. So if we go down Main Street, and across from the school, where the little school was on Main Street, there's a little tiny log house, and it's a hairdressing shop now, the ones that live in Bentley. And that's where Mom rented, and we moved there. So that little house, we stayed there for about a year and a half, and it's in that little house that I gave my heart to Jesus. So I followed Alice, and Alan, and Audrey, and Donna. I tried to get saved 2 days in a row at Vacation Bible School, but Donna pulled me back. She said, no, you already got saved, you can't do it again. So it was in that little house. So when I replied today, I said, Bill, stop, because I was kind of doing a profound little trip today. I did every house that we ever lived in. So I'm going to get mixed up here, Bob. Okay,
That's nothing new.
Bill is coming 12. He's coming 12. Okay, we went through another trial. So he's 12. He'd already been the man of the house, right? He was 10 when he became the man of the house. And he was 10 when he had to get us to school and the sleigh behind the horse. He was 10 when he was the man of the house because our dad was gone. And our dad appeared again in April of 49, so that Alan is 12. And our dad said he'd been changed and he wanted to start over. And I'm going to move the gang to Stellar. And it'll all be okay. I'm sorry for what I did wrong. And so my mom trusted him, and we uprooted from Bentley. We uprooted from the Bentley Church. They had a big farewell for us. They gave us you're not crying because what am I saying? Okay. They gave us a quilt, and we had a really beautiful farewell, but we were going to move to Stellar. Everything was going to be okay. We're going to have a daddy again, and us 6 kids would be okay. We got to Stellar, and we found out very quickly that was not his intent. His intent was to separate us. The 3 little girls go to the orphanage. Billy, you would stay with Mom. Alice, you'd go out to work. And Alan, you're going to come with me. And our mom had the courage and the strength of heart that it takes, and only God can give that. That's a secret strength in your heart. In fact, these trials make us stronger, not weaker, right? And Mom got stronger through that. She said, over my dead body, will that ever happen, I'm going to keep this family together. And from that day on, Alan's heart and Alice's heart. So 12 and 14. They said, we're going to make money, Mommy. We're going to help you raise these silly little kids. And Alan's heart never changed. And so when I sat there today, I felt like I needed to weep and weep and weep. But Alan's heart never changed for us. So really, you guys, you have to thank us. Mom prayed and asked God, what are we going to do? This is serious, right? Our dad had left us stuck in Stellar. And Mom, God said to Mom, go back to Bentley. Those people love God. They love you. They're going to help you. Your kids are going to be safe. Go back to Bentley. Alice said, we can't go back to Bentley, Mom. They gave us a note and they take it away. She was so afraid that the Bentley people never took her clothes away. So Mom opened a bakery. She opened a bakery, and if you drive down Main Street any day of the week, there's your Bank of Montreal, and right beside that little store, there's a bakery, right? She opened a bakery. Everything was done by hand. If you were going to buy her Indian food cake. It was 12 eggs beaten by hand out behind the back step. And your dad, you guys, he started to dig toilet bowls. And he got 25 cents an hour. In fact, how do we know that we're not standing on some right now? Because there was no building then in 1949. There could have been only, and then he dug a 200-foot, what do we want to say?
I was going to say, be careful where you walk.
Oh, be careful where you walk. He dug a 200-foot trench. He just kept working. He'd get on his bike. We only had one bike, 6 kids. He'd go down to Bentley Motors and he'd work his little heart out. Alan was going to keep 7 of us together. 6 kids, 1 mom. Everything that I could tell you today, and there's so much, whoa, I gotta do it short. But anyway, it was always to keep it together, right? Always to keep it together. I want to just tell you a few things. You think I looked at your notes earlier, they aren't that good. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about top-notch construction. He's wrong, don't believe this when he comes. Alan's first construction was a swing for Dawn and I. And he found a log, and he found a 2x6, and he had a couple pieces of board. I don't know where he got the rope, I don't know how he made the seat, but he put Dawn on, and he pushed it, and it was so crooked, boom, Dawn hit the pole. She's here. Remember, we rushing her down. He did a lot of kind of abusive things too, right? He was kind of getting that. Anyway, and then he decided, we had no toys, you guys. We had no money. And so he decided he'd make us stilts. And so he made us stilts, but he put, you know what stilts are like, everybody? Do the younger generation know what stilts are like? You tell them when you get them home. Anyway, he put the things that you have to climb up on too high. So then he said, you go out to the clothesline stand, you can get on that. And then away you go. You just terrorize Bentley on your stilts. The problem is, we couldn't stop because we were too high off the ground and we didn't have a clue. And then he said, oh, come on, Dawn and Ruthie, we were such cute little girls. And he said, I'll teach you to ride the bike under, like you go under the bar. So you put your one little leg, over on that pedal. He gets the other pedal, he gets your other. You grab the bars and you take off. And I think we rode around the graveyard, Donna, when I went that road today. The reason we were that far from home is we couldn't stop either. So he made us good things. Alice was always knitting. And one Christmas, Alice, she just didn't quite get all her knitting done in time. But one time she gave Alan, she put all these pieces of wool. And he looked at her and he said, Alice, I don't need coveralls. And he made wonderful furniture for us. And he was always hiding. And are you getting ready?
We've only got 6 pages left.
No, I just want to. I got to tell him when he's 16, and then I'm going to go to 18, and then we can do it. 16 years old. So we're in, we call it the carrot house. We called every house by a certain name. We named it. We moved a lot in them. It was a big trip today. And one day, 16 years old, and one day that, he'd been working all along, never stopping, so you got to keep in your mind, his mind was to keep us together. I got to help Mom. And one day when he was 16 years old, he pulled into the driveway of our house with a 1939 Dodge Coupe, 5-passenger, all 7 of us got in it like nothing, and we took a trip around Bentley, and we terrorized Bentley. We were so excited.
He was 2 years old when they made that car.
2? Oh yeah, that's right.
39, 37?
Yeah, 39, okay. Then he said to me, because I don't know how come the older girls went there, he said, come on, we're going to go to Grimby. He said, there's 3 lights on the dash, and one will blink at one speed, and one will blink at another speed, and one will blink at this speed. So you start, first light, we're going, 10, 20, 30 maybe miles an hour. It was blinking. And then the orange is 30 to 50, but he loved the red light. And so we were going, was it gravel then? It was big humps of rock. Yeah. Okay, so 50 to 70, the red light blinked, and it was so much fun. Now I forgot to tell you one thing. when he committed himself to be the boss of the family, he went a little bit too far. He put his hands on his hips, and he'd say to Donna and I and little Billy, he'd say, if you kids are bad, I will be cutting off the heat. Well, can you imagine how we shivered in fear because we had no money, and he was even going to cut off our heat. Now I have to tell you one more thing, and then I'll shut up, Bob. 1956, Miriam.
You jumped ahead a little too far.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, all right.
I can go back if I want. I'm going to make sure. I don't know what I can take. Miriam. Our brother was only 18, Miriam. He was coming 19, but he was only 18 when Lawrence Bingham said, Al, you've got to come on a blind date, right? You're going to go to a Martin Luther film. And Lawrence had Shirley, and Shirley was your friend, and they needed Alan. Apparently Alan was late for that date, was he? Because he had to drive from Bentley to Edmonton. That's what one of the stories says. Anyway, boom, love at first sight. Our brother who cared about us, worked for us, wanted to do everything to keep us together. He didn't give a rip what happened to us. He was in love.
Free at last, free at last.
And you know what he did? He had saved his money in a jar. He helped Mom. Every house we lived in, he helped Mom, he helped us. He had saved $300, and he paid cash for his car. He was ready to buy your diamond, Miriam, and you set your date for November.
Secretary throws his head a bit.
Sorry, this is
And they're off.
this is a story that he told at the time about secretary.
Royal and Regal.
He told the story.
Restless Jet, followed by our natives. Up on the outside is Gold Bag. They're buying the stands for the first time. Chucky Green is showing the way by a length and a half. Royal and Regal now being moved to the inside, looking for room. Gold Bag is up on the outside. Then on the rail is Angle Light, followed by Sham. Our native, Restless Jet, My Gallant, then Forgo. On the outside, Namo, followed by Secretary, Warbuck, and finally, Twice a Prince. Moving on the turn, the leader is Chucky Green, leading by 2.5 lengths. Gold Bag is second by a head. Sham now third on the outside by 2 lengths. Royal and Regal fourth, 2 lengths, then back to Angle Light in fifth. Secretary has made a sudden move and is now sixth. Then it's Restless Jet, our native beginning to move up. Navajo, Forgo, and Warbuck beginning to move up.
Watching Secretary.
And Twice a Prince. They're into the turn and punching formally with Chucky Green still the leader by a half a length. On the outside is challenging his Sham, and he's now got a length in front. Now Chucky Green responds to the challenge of those 2 heads apart. Royal and Regal is third, and holding on. Gold Bag drops back. Secretary is fourth and moving up on the outside, and is now third. And moving up the leaders as they come over every stretch. They're up to the stretch, and Sham is the leader. He leads it by a length.
The reason I put that on there is we've heard the story about Secretary. Al has told that hundreds and hundreds of times. He came and he saw he went from 6th right to the front. In the Triple Crown, he was back in the pack and came to the front, and he won by 25, what do they call them? Furlongs. He won, but he was 25 ahead. And but in Mexico or wherever, Al would tell us this story. Because the Secretary had won the Triple Crown after 24 years. He had won the Triple Crown. And they couldn't understand why. And the other guys were beating their horses and everything, and he didn't have to hit the horse or anything. And he would just go. Unbelievable. And so what Al would talk about, and it really fits together, is Secretary, they didn't know how come he could win so much. They couldn't figure it out, and it was a lady that had him, and she had to go against all the men that were running all the horses and the big shows and everything. Anyways, and this is the part that Al would tell us every time. After Secretary died, they wanted to figure out what was the reason he could win. And they did an operation, and his heart was 2 times larger than any other horse's. It was over 22 pounds, his heart. And it's very fitting. Al's heart was like that. That's what his heart was like. They ministered to people, cared for people, and it started. You see a bit of the history. You know why he did some of the goofy things. But also the desire to help and to bless. And so you tell that story, you tell other stories, always to challenge people and let them know that you can do something. You can do something. And coming from and by the way, it cut out, but he did get Miriam. But when he was dating Miriam, they said he would stop out when he'd bring her home, and they'd sit in the car out in the front, and the lights would start flashing. So he thought, I'll fix that. So he went into the back alley and parked there. The backyard lights started flashing. But he didn't give up, and so almost 63 years, they have ministered all over the country and ministered to many of us. And so what an incredible story. We're going to watch, I've got a lot of things, but we're not going to do it all. There's just so many things. Everything that was his sister, Ruth, and she shared, and that's all on YouTube now, so you can watch it on YouTube, the whole service. It was 2 hours, it was an hour and 45 minutes of people telling stories. And laughter, the funeral director said, we've never been to funerals like this, where everyone's laughing and joking and telling stories, and they said, there's a sadness. And for Miriam, we're there to support her and love her, but Al wouldn't want us to be sad. He'd have some kind of crazy thing happen to remind us that no, life is not about being sad. He had every right to live his whole life sad, but he chose not to. He chose to because he had a big heart, and that's why that story of Secretary meant so much to him. So we're going to go back now. If we've got that video where we're at, and this was when we had the celebration celebration down at the camp for their about 30 years of ministry driving to Mexico. They went down about five times a year. It's 2,000-mile drive each way, there and back, and 5 times a year. Others went with them 3 times a year, and we'd load on the bus, and we'd leave Silver Lake at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning, and we'd get into Santa Fe, New Mexico, and about 10 o'clock Friday night, we'd gone right around the clock. and then get up and tour around Santa Fe for a little bit, and then we'd drive on into El Paso, then into Juarez, and then begin to build. And in your bulletin, you have an article that, there's a number of things there. But the article is a church that they built in Mexico. The pastor tells the story, and it was done in Spanish, and I had Maria Ruiz in El Paso that ministers in Mexico. I had her listen to it and write it out for us in English. So that was the service, and it's pretty powerful. So let's just go back to the count now. This just shows a bit of